This is a podcast from the Queen City Podcast Network.
Hope. Sometimes we need help finding it. And sometimes that help comes in the form of stories of people who've lost it and found it yet again. That's why we're here. Welcome to Hope with Ramona Holloway. Welcome to Hope with Ramona Holloway. 2021 was a big year for me. It was the year that my job changed drastically, and it was the year that I said farewell to my mom. And over the past several years, I've done a lot of healing and a lot of growing. And that's why we are here. We are here for the hope that I found with a lot of help. That's why in this 4-part series, we're focusing on hope for caregivers. We're talking to the people who are in the dementia care journey right now, and we're going to be talking to the people on the other side. And I knew that this was not something that I could do by myself. I needed help. I needed a local resource. So I went to Memory and Movement Charlotte, and I talked to them about collaborating for this 4-part series on dementia care. And they loaned me their big gun. I want to introduce you to Dr. Charles Edwards. He is a Charlotte-based author. He is a podcaster, and he is the founder of Memory and Movement Charlotte, a nonprofit practice that helps people navigate the very challenging space of caring for someone with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or other forms of dementia. Chuck has written books, and he's no stranger to talking, but are you a stranger to food fights?
I've only been in one food fight, and I'm ashamed to say it was at the University of Virginia. It was amazing, but that's about my only experience I've had with food fights.
I bring up food fight because my mom and I were best friends. And one of the things that we did on our best friend mother-daughter journey was we created these contracts. It was a contract that was supposed to help us encourage each other to be the healthiest we could be. So fast forward to 20 years after we signed our first contract, and my mom is living with me, and I am paying all of the bills, and I am working 2 jobs. And my mother brings ice cream sandwiches into the house. Now, it doesn't sound like a huge offense, but by this time I've had gastric bypass surgery, and I'm really doing my best to manage my health so that I'm not getting the degenerative nerve diseases that are plaguing my mom. And so my mom is now saying to me, why do I have to suffer because you don't want to eat ice cream sandwiches? My best friend. It was like, I'm doing everything here. I couldn't understand how this person who always seemed to want the best for me had become so selfish. I could not understand that my best friend had dementia. Is that common?
Well, actually, it's very interesting. And we'll probably get into it when we get into more parts of the series. But one of the first things that happened when the frontal lobe gets involved with dementia is the patients start to crave sweets. So she was acting out of her new reality. And also they become slightly self-absorbed. Same thing. So her self-absorption and her craving of sweets, you were not on the top of her list anymore. That's why you're so emotional.
How could you love an ice cream sandwich more than me? I was okay with her loving the dog more than me. My nephew, I was okay. But the fact that you're putting an ice cream sandwich, those decisions, I could not grasp that was part of the disease.
It is.
So how do you see caregivers reacting in the early stages when they're not quite sure whether this person is just self-absorbed and diabetic or whether or not this person is changing because of something affecting their brain?
Well, early on is kind of tough. It's actually in a little bit stage 2, because of course stage 1 that we've written about is about what happens before. That was that nice relationship with your mother and the best friend. So this is caregivers now, and we don't, and I'm not really interested in all the strategies and nuts and bolts about, how you handle a certain situation or whatever.
Really? That
No.
shocks me.
Well, I'm interested in, we spent a lot of time on that, but what I'm interested in my stages of caregiving is the emotional response. What are the emotions, which you
Woo.
seem to be right there.
Because let me tell you, Chuck, I grabbed those ice cream sandwiches and I marched outside and I spiked them in the trash can.
God, I love ice cream sandwiches. Oh, this is killing me. It's killing me.
But it was killing me. But you say,
Well,
that
you felt, she
emotional
felt like
stuff.
that this is something that's so important to me. I've already had this surgery and, you and I have agreed on it. And then you thought you were dealing with the same person and you thought that she is consciously insulting me, disrespecting me with this action. It's like an act of dislove. She knows how important it is and what I've suffered to get to this point. And what happens is, and I'll go through this, after that, you become a little bit wiser. You say, that was so unlike her. And you become very aware of little slights like that. Burt Bacharach and Hal David wrote a song called Wishing and Hoping. It was published in 1963. And originally Dionne Warwick did it, and then Dusty Springfield made a huge hit out of it. She covered it. But it's called Wishing and Hoping. And after you had that first kind of realization, the next thing you know, every day you're waking up with your fingers crossed and you're saying, I hope I don't have something happen today that will show me where my life is going.
Yeah, that's hard because all I could see at that point was my world getting smaller. Because I watched dementia care with my grandfather. So
Her father?
Her father,
Yeah.
yes. So I saw a very ugly side of it from a distance. And my mother was not his primary caregiver, but I would be hers. It was so draining because sometimes she would be perfectly okay. And that's one of the things that's so confusing early on is because one day it seems like decisions are okay
You're
on Monday, and then Wednesday they're not, but then Thursday they're okay again.
You've just said it almost perfectly. You're on a roller coaster. And when you have the Monday where everything is perfect and fine, we're okay. There's no problem. And then on Wednesday, when you see something, you just absolutely crash. You say, I can't believe that this is happening to me. And this is where, and all of a sudden you see your great-grandfather, correct?
My grandfather.
Your grandfather. You see that. And then there's this underlying anxiety about everything, that every time you walk in, is it going to be normal? And the takeaway from the second stage of caregiving, which I call wishing and hoping, is this fear. And it is—
Say that again.
Fear.
Woo!
And then also that fear causes this sort of subconscious anxiety, which all of a sudden—
And we're already talking to someone who has diagnosed anxiety, depression and anxiety I live with and manage. So it was more of a clash of diseases than anything else.
It's a collision.
Yeah.
It's a collision.
But you talk about that fear.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell people?
I'll give you a story. This one of our patients, one of the examples that we use is that she's been an amazing caregiver. She's married to a good friend of mine, and she just casually asked me one day. She said, Chuck, I saw something that my husband, Mark, always does the dishes. We have this sort of system, and he does the dishes. And I noticed one night he put the glasses in the dishwasher up. And of course, they fill completely with water. And I just said, Mark, I don't know whether you realized it or not, but you put the glasses up. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. And then the next night he did the same thing. And she had that sort of epiphany. She said, I know something is wrong. And early on, of course, when it doesn't happen very often, you can kind of get back on the roller coaster. And then as we progress and those lapses, those deficiencies become more frequent and sometimes more intense, then you've gone into a different stage and you're in it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's a different set of circumstances.
Do you see caregivers go through stages the same way patients go through stages?
Absolutely. And a lot of it has to do with emotions. We're going to get into a lot of that, I'm sure. But
let's get into it now.
Well, how the emotional response that you had to something like an ice cream sandwich is obviously out of proportion, but it doesn't reflect the consequences of what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. She has what her dad has. Then my life is going in a completely different direction. And actually, at this point, with 2 jobs and trying to balance this stuff, I don't have the bandwidth for this. I don't have it. Mom, if you're going to get sick, you got to give me 6 months because I'm not ready for it.
I had literally since 2004, by this time we're talking it's 2015, 2016, more like 2014, I am literally operating on like 0 vacation because I had to take my vacation with my partner. I was in radio at the time, and we had a contract that basically said when he was off, I had to be off and vice versa. And I was saving all of my time for doctor's visits because there were a lot and hospitalizations. So.
Was your mom living with you at this time?
Yes. My mom moved in 2004 after her very first spine surgery.
Did she have any confusion or delirium with her spine surgery?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I look at that first spine surgery as the first time when I really started seeing some very odd decisions.
All right. So we oftentimes, people who do not have dementia or some cognitive issues usually do not get delirium following surgery. Okay, they don't.
Say that again.
People that don't have cognitive issues, it's rare that they will get delirious. They can if they get dehydrated and stuff, but usually in our practice, when we had someone early on that just had been diagnosed, or we were worried about their cognition, and they were going to have a procedure, I almost knew that they were going to get delirious.
Mm-hmm.
So she had already had cognitive issues in 2004, and the delirium, which was probably precipitated by the pain medication and by the anesthesia,
Mm-hmm.
but it was an indication that she already had it. Now, postoperative delirium can last for months.
Yes.
People don't realize this, and it's really, really important that if you see delirium, they may come back up to their steady state. Oftentimes they don't, but if they do, it may take as much as 3-4 months to get back there.
And it was baffling to me because, for example, after I think it was her second spine surgery, the social worker or the technician comes in to interview mom and says, what's your name? And she says her name. And then, who's the president of the United States? And she said, George W. Bush. It was not George W. Bush, but she had an attitude that they were asking her these questions that she felt everyone knows. Mm-hmm. And she thought that they were treating her as if she was ignorant. But the truth is, she had absolutely no idea. And I was horrified because it was like, we were trying to fix her back, but I think we broke her. You guys broke her. Like she knew this
she
stuff.
She was already broke. One of the things I think, and I need to make sure that this point so we don't lose it. Oftentimes, I think that caregivers caring for parents mm-hmm. have not a completely different experience, but a very different experience than caregivers caring for a spouse.
How so?
Well, the spouse is that they're usually in the same house. They usually have this sort of intimate relationship, meaning that, not sexual, but, just that they are together a whole lot. And their lives are usually on the same time frame that they're retired or they're still working, whatever. There's a lot of commonality there. But when you have a generational gap between the caregiver and the parent.
And can we also talk about a power gap? That's a power gap too.
Okay, well, yes, but and also the shift in power is late. You don't realize it. You feel helpless. And then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, I'm in charge here. She's not in charge. By the time you've made that insight, the relationship has already had some fractures in it, okay? And we can talk about that. But this has come to me late because I haven't read anything about this, but when you are a child caring for a parent, your life stops to a certain extent when you are taking care of the parent. You've got a job, you've got a family, you've got children, and all of a sudden you think, oh my God, I got to go see mom. So then you turn your back sort of on what your life is, and you go and take care of mom for a short time, knowing that in that time frame, you don't have enough wherewithal to get it all done. You're just hoping, I just hope she's okay for another day. And so there's a sort of commitment and tremendous guilt because you know that someone needs to be there with a single parent, and you're trying to make that work and keeping your life going. It's called the double-decker, what is it called? The sandwich generation.
Yeah.
And so there's a chapter in there about the Deckers. I called her the Decker. But so I think that it's a unique commitment to the parent, and it's almost always full of regret, and because you really can't do it from a distance. Also, when you are taking care of a parent in your home, that changes your life every day.
Every single day.
So you have not only the worry about what you're doing and what the demands are for you, but you come home you've got this responsibility.
I tell people one of the hardest things to manage was me, because I'm working full time, and even when I wasn't working 2 jobs, it's because my first job had become caregiving. And you can leave work, but you can't turn home off, not when you're there and not when you're gone. So there's this constant buzz of
what's going on with mom, and what's
who's
going
at
on
the
at
house,
home? Is she turning the stove off? All that stuff.
Is she climbing on something? And then the minute you think you're okay, like, okay, we found a rhythm here. It changes. Yeah. Here's act 3. Like, wait a minute, I only wrote 2 acts. Yeah. So it was just, when you talk about the emotion, that part was hard, because when do you get off the roller coaster? I know for me, it took a minute.
Well, the roller coaster goes away when you move into stage 3, which is in the trenches. Okay. You know what you got. You don't have that Monday when you think everything is all right. Mm-mm. You have become a manager, and there's a lot of stuff in these different stages. But I just want to stress the point about children and being the sandwich generation, taking care of your children. The one lady that we had that I wrote about in Late Fragment was taking care of her mother, taking care of her husband, taking care of her daughter, and taking care of her daughter's children. And there's a funny story about the red glasses, and I won't get into it, but it's in there. It's interesting though, when the patient finally dies, and I'm going to talk kind of pretty straightforward. It's very rare for a child to have an abnormal grief reaction to the death of a parent. But what they do have is a tremendous amount of guilt, saying, I could have done better. Maybe, and you're only human. You say, oh, I remember I was really mad as hell. I got mad at her.
Sometimes you just feel so selfish. Let me tell you, Chuck, I was raised by a woman who could guilt anyone. She was one of the top fundraisers in her church because guilt. Yeah. I was raised with guilt. So I felt guilty if I wasn't giving my all at work, because I was a part of a team. My partner and I had a brand together. I felt guilty when I wasn't doing 100% at home. Mm-hmm. And during this process, my nephew moved in with us. And I mean, I was feeling guilty all the way around, because especially in the dementia care space, I didn't have the bandwidth to do what I used to do at work. I could not do what I did before. It wasn't possible to do both. You become
very easily distracted too. And also your emotions, it's right there. So someone comes and says, would you like mustard or mayonnaise? And the next thing you know, you're in a battle with them. Okay. Over, it's almost like, wait a minute, you don't understand what's going on in my life. I've got all of these pressures. And then there's one more decision to make, and it's just too much.
And now that I'm gone, I'm trying to, when I'm away from the house, I'm trying to shut everything down so that I can not be in the emotions of what happened at the house, or worry about what's going on at the house. Yeah. And for a while, she did okay without help. But I found myself, after, for the millionth time, it felt like telling her, don't try to wrestle with the trash cans out to the curb. I mean, what do I have to do? Do I have to have someone come in here and sit with you?
And short-term memory's gone. So, you might as well be talking to the wall.
Right. So I'm saying, and as I was saying, do I have to have someone come in here and sit with you? And was like,
now we're threatening, and then you have to do it.
And then,
I know.
And here's how baffling and challenging it was. So at that point, I was still kind of in denial. I was seeing all these signs, weird decisions. And the person who I eventually hired to come in and help let me know that Wheezy was stockpiling her medications and not taking them. And then I also found out after Mom died that my mom was writing letters of recommendation for this caregiver who I had taken so much time to find and hire. Mom was sitting at home writing letters of recommendation for her to get another job because she felt like she could do better than sitting around taking care of Wheezy. What? Because Wheezy didn't need help. So it's like, it felt like as this kid, everything I was doing over here to make it okay, she was at home trying to find a way to undo it. So detaching myself somehow from the wave was the only way on the emotional side I was able to do it. Mm-hmm. How do you help caregivers find that point, or do they just have to find it on their own?
What they need more than anything, and one of the sort of things that everything we know about caregiving, we learn from our caregivers, from our families. I read when I was, training a lot of books about caregiving, and a lot of it had to do with strategies, what you do with this, or, how you set out the table so they'd be able to see their, contrast the plate with the mat and all. And I thought that this is crazy stuff. And so we started to listen to our caregivers' families, and they taught us everything we know about it. And one of the major insights is that all they want you to do is to listen to them, be able to have time for them to tell you what their situation is. And we became pretty good at helping some of the things that we could help with.
Such as?
Well, for instance, if you had come to me at this point, I would say, we're at the companion stage. We need someone to take your mother everywhere she goes. And if you're not there, she is there. And then you don't try to communicate with your mother and make sense. You communicate with the guardian, and that's how you have leverage. And oftentimes the guardian, the patients realize that my freedom, my memory, my balance is in this person, and they become so dependent on them, which is a good thing for you because it gives you a place to breathe, just able to know, I know that if the guardian is there or the companion, also it allows them to take her to the park. She's not at home and shut up. She can go to the park. They can go shopping. It's interesting though. I'm always amazed that had someone with short-term memory issues or even insight, frontal lobe issues. And yet on the positive side, a lot of their positive attributes go away. This kindness, they become self-absorbed, the sweets, obsessions, you and I can talk about that, but they become hoarders. They will hide their medications.
Some of them become hypersexual.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. But the diabolical stuff,
I love that
strategy.
word. That's a very good word for me and Wheezy in the early stages. She was doing some diabolical
and
stuff.
that stays. They can trick each other. They'll trick you. They'll play games. They'll hide things.
She said some very cruel things.
Oh. So the good stuff goes and the bad stuff stays. So she was writing letters of recommendation so that this lady could get another job so she'd be back in charge of herself.
And I'm telling you, Chuck, I won't even share with you the details of me trying to have a love life as a single woman with a mother with dementia living in the same house.
Oh, my God.
I won't even. Why did I try?
Yeah.
Why did I try, Chuck? Wow. But my mother's advice growing up was, if you have to ask. She would say, if you have to ask that question, you already know. Mm-hmm. So when I look back at me saying, do I have to have somebody sitting here with you?
Yeah.
The answer was yes.
And we could.
Should you be driving? I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, do I need somebody? Is it okay for you to live by yourself? When I started asking those questions, for me, I knew it was time to get into another stage.
Yeah, we were. The book that I'm writing right now is called Coming Closer, and it's about early memory loss. One of the things that we have 4 goals for our patients. Okay, we want them calm, safe, clean, and loved. And each one of those has a litany. Each one has, it's a formula for you always to know whether or not I'm doing okay. All right, because that's the question. Is everybody with a little bit of memory loss having the same problems I am? And is mom safe? And so, like safety issues, all right, there are 2 that are non-negotiable. One is firearms and one is driving. Okay, those 2 are non-negotiable. And we spend a lot of time on them. We don't have any firearms in the house. And if we can't achieve that, we have some sort of strategies that we can deal with. What we're worried about, of course, is not that they're necessarily going to hurt themselves, but now with the way that society has evolved, that if we had paranoia on the part of your mother that these people are trying to get me and it's the pizza delivery guy.
Actually, it was the trash collectors.
Okay.
So
paranoid, they're out to get me. And so therefore they go inside and they get a gun and come out. A police officer drives up and says, drop the gun. We know this is okay. They don't drop the gun. They turn. And the next thing you know, you have a catastrophe. So firearms and driving are non-negotiable. Medications. We have to have a dispense system, and we have to be able to tell whether or not she's taken her medication. What happens in all of the containers are away. The only thing we're dealing with is the dispenser, that plastic thing with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Because patients who have memory issues, they don't forget to take their medication. They forgot they took it and they take it again. So we have medication issues. We have falls, stove. We've had several apartments have significant fires. And of course, if you're not there, you're thinking about, is mom going to try to boil some water and fix tea, and she'll leave the stove on?
There was an incident where mom was boiling chicken for the dog when I wasn't home. That was the last time she used the stove. She forgot about it. And by the time I got home, my house smelled disgusting, but she was afraid to open up the door to let more air in. Because she was afraid that we didn't have a screen door. So, and she couldn't remember how to open up the window. So, I mean, it was just, but
the last two, the one is if the patients ever have a delusion, I don't live here, I live somewhere else, they're going to wander, they're going to go. Okay. And it's not a matter of time. They're going to go as soon as they see an opening. And so that's another just trick. And the last thing are scams. Most of the time they scam themselves. But we have had, with frontal lobe issues, you lose the ability to weigh risk. And we've had people lose hundreds of millions of dollars, literally, because the patriarch was impaired and didn't have the insight to realize that he was making a very wealthy family here lost a lot of their money because of the fact that they did not know what was going on. Like your mother, she's writing letters of recommendation, and if she were the matriarch, well, she was the matriarch, but if she had access to a lot of money, you can imagine the checks that could have gone out. So
I have absolutely no idea what happened to her retirement. She cashed it in before I got involved in her finances.
Exactly. That's oh my God, this is she's a poster girl for all this stuff.
I'm the poster child for. But And I give myself grace now because she had been so independent, and I was not raised in a household where my mom discussed finances with me. I was the child. That was her business. I did not go in that woman's purse until she died. And so there was a lot of growing up for me to do.
At what point did you realize that you were in charge now, that you were the adult and she was the child? And usually by the time that that realization happens, it's way down. It's amazing because, that there's that respect factor. Here she was, a very strong individual.
She was my world.
One of the things that the first stage of caregiving is before there's any sign of any cognitive or memory issue. It's what was the relationship like before anybody realized. Now, in your case, and in most cases, that there are, in retrospect, you go back and you go, oh yeah, that's why. And the fracturing of the relationship, especially in spousal relationships, where the one or the other feels like that the patient has lost the ability to love them. So then you've got the caregiving thing dumped in their lap. And so going back, and there's this, we won't go through it now. We might in a later session. But one of the interesting things is why are we so slow to make the diagnosis or to understand that we have a problem? There are several factors in that. The first is that social skills are preserved.
Honey, she could get through the early parts of every conversation.
Right. We call it the 5-minute rule. Mm-hmm. One day I was at some sort of event, and there was a lady who was in her 80s or late 80s, maybe early 90s. And she was talking to some people. She was telling cute stories. And I go, oh my God, I just hope that when I'm that age, I'll be able to, manage like she is. And then I came back a while and she was telling the same story. And, you knew the 5-minute rule. 5 minutes at a cocktail party. After that, they usually will go. Social skills being intact, like your mother. Here she was, that person that was asking her who the president of the United States was, she was playing games with him. She was saying, maybe it's George. You can just see her kidding around and trying to hide.
Mad. She was mad.
Well, but whatever is that her social skills were still intact to a point. I think one of the things that happens on both sides of the delay, one of the things is that people that are living in a town different from their parent, the phone is your enemy. Because when you call them, you say, Mom, how are you doing? She says, oh, I'm doing great. Well, what'd you do today? Well, I went out to lunch with, she didn't go out to lunch with anybody.
You have no idea.
She was lying. And so, and the other thing is, of course, and you and I have talked about this, is the social stigma is so profound. It's almost plague-like, okay?
She was very ashamed for people to know.
Right.
And keeping her secret also made it harder for me.
It happens on both sides, that you don't want anybody to know because it's humiliating, it's embarrassing, and it shouldn't be. If someone breaks their leg or someone has a stroke, your house is full of food. Everybody's over there. Oh my God. And if someone has cognitive decline, and the term is that Kathy Izzard said in her book, 100-Story Home, she was a very prominent family in Texas, and her mother got bipolar and had to go into a facility for a while. She eventually recovered, but she said, there are no casseroles for crazy. And
there are no casseroles for crazy. You asked me a really important question, and that's where we're going to pick up in part 2 of our 4-part series on caregiving with Memory and Movement, Charlotte.
Perfect.
We are going to talk about why we're so slow to get moving in the right direction for ourselves as caregivers. So I hope you join us for part 2 of our 4-part series on caregivers with Memory and Movement Charlotte and our wonderful Charlotte-based expert, Dr. Charles Edwards. Thanks for sharing hope with me. If you'd like to connect, go to RamonaHolloway.com. You can find me on my socials. Once again, Ramona Holloway. And if you'd like to support this podcast, guess what? RamonaHolloway.com.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.